Hi there, I'm sitting here with my Nee Nee. It's my first visit home to Primeville in 5 years, and I always love to stop by and visit my Nee Nee. And one of my favorite things to do is to talk to her about her life, I just love to hear about memories from her past. And um, I like to hear stories about my grandmother when she was little and kind of what her experience was like going through the Depression and what life was like for generations past. And I've always found that to be very fascinating and very interesting. And fortunately, my Nini has agreed to have this conversation on camera today so that I can listen to it whenever I want and share it with you. So um, thank you so much for doing this, Nini. And I'm just going to actually, if you want to just start off by telling us your birthday and where you were born, and then share your memories from there.
Okay, well, my birthday will be December the 10th of this year. I will be 87, getting off close to 90. I was born in Hay Springs, Nebraska, in my mother's aunt's home and lived there. I believe I was 12 whenever we come west. Life wasn't easy at all. There was 10 in the family, my parents, 8 children. And when we lived in Nebraska, if we didn't butcher and put our food up, we didn't have food to eat. We had to do that, and everybody knew it. And I learned everything. Only thing that I can't remember is how my dad and I used to make corned beef. We did barrels. We had wooden barrels, and we did barrels full of it, and full of sauerkraut, full of cucumbers, pickles, and we salted down our pork, made our hams and bacon, and we canned our chicken, and if we didn't eat through the winter. But we had better food then than what we have today, and we never had no money, and went by team and wagon or team and buggy. We were happy. We never had no toys to play with. We made our own, and of course, one thing I must add though is I had a brother that was 3 years younger than me, and we played cops and robbers, or cowboys and Indians. But we fought a whole lot who was going to be the cowboy and who was going to be the Indian. We both wanted to be the cowboys, or we both wanted to be the Indians. But we had fun anyway. And I remember my dad, one winter it was awful bad, and some man come by, and he said it was a Model T. At that point I didn't know anything, but it was a car. And he got stuck. He ran off the road. He got stuck in the snow. My dad hitched up his team and went up there. Never met the man or anything, and he pulled him out of the snowbank, and he wanted to pay my dad, and his daddy said no. He said, well, here's 35 cents. Buy your kids some candy. And that was the only money he made that whole year, was
Wow.
35 cents. But we were happy. We didn't know any different. But we were honest and clean and God fearing people. So then at times got so bad. I remember this was the Depression, and things was awful, very hard. And my mother used to churn butter, and or my dad wanted to churn butter and take it into town and sell it. Or they take eggs in and sell it. Or sometimes the Watkins man would come by and they'd trade butter and eggs for stuffed spices and pepper and salt. Or not salt, but pepper, I know. And then it got so bad that my dad said we just had to leave. We couldn't grow anything anymore. The Dust Bowl was so bad. And you didn't have no water, no rain, no nothing. So he had a brother that lived in Idaho, and the brother wrote a letter and said to come there. And they had a lot of fruit and vegetables and everything, and could fish. And so my dad had an old Dodge touring car, and he put Mama, 8 kids, and a great big uh, German collie dog in that back seat. And we all went to Idaho. Of course, we had to stop and build a fire and cook something on the side of the road. And we got to Idaho. My dad's brother met us somewhere, and they were going to go to work in the timber, cutting logs or something. That my daddy worked for maybe 6 months or so, and then there was no more work. He just didn't have no work, and with 8 kids to put in school, it was pretty hard. But I went to school, and I went into that 10th grade all the time we were there, and then I couldn't go no longer because I had to go to work. And my little brothers, they didn't have no shoes, but at that time I could buy a pair of shoes for 97 cents.
Wow.
And I bought my 3 brothers shoes so they'd go to school, and my 2 little sisters, twins. The youngest one wasn't old enough to go to school yet. But we were poor, but we made out. And then my folks left, and they went to Washington. And things were just getting a little better. Kids were getting a little older and everything, And so, but when we were back there, I mean, I knew what it was to cook. I was 8 years old, making a batch of bread. Had 7 loaves twice a week for my family, mother's family. And we never saw a doctor. If we were sick, we just was sick till we got well.
Mm.
But after that, when we moved to Idaho, my daddy couldn't find no more work. I went to work. I was making $1 a day, taking care of women who just had a baby and was supposed to stay in bed for I don't know how long. But that wasn't easy. It wasn't easy at all. But I got through it, and then my folks moved to Oregon. To Washington first, and the jobs just wasn't there, so they come to Oregon where my older sister lived, and my dad got to go to work in a sawmill. And my husband and I, we were still in away from there in another part of Oregon, and then we finally came to Oregon too. And times hasn't been easy or anything like that, but I think I'm a better person for living through this and knowing that I can do it. I could go back to anything. I could butcher a pig, or I knew how to do it, but I'm not strong enough now. I just don't have the strength to do anything like that now, but I do my canning and make my own jams and jellies and like everything like my mother used to do. And I don't have to now. I'm alone and I don't eat very much, but I still enjoy making it and giving it to people who don't have it.
Mm-hmm.
And now I'm getting very close to 90, and I'm still growing a garden, taking care of my home, and cooking my own meals, having big dinners for friends and neighbors and family, and I love it. I love it all. My husband passed away in July of '06, but I've took care of the place and done everything here by myself. And I guess that comes from doing hard work and having a lot of knowledge when you're a kid. But I don't know what else to say.
Well, I wanted to know if you would talk a little bit about your memories of when the twins were born. And my grandmother was a twin, and I always loved hearing about this.
Yes. Well, when the twins was born, we lived in Missouri, and there was one room, and then there was a big high step down. It was probably 3 feet, and you had to walk 2 feet to the kitchen outside. There was 2 buildings.
Mm-hmm.
And when the twins was born, they hung the sheets up all over and made kind of a room for my mother. And we were all in there because it was the only place we had that heated anything. We had a cook stove out in the kitchen part. but I was scared to death. I didn't know what was going on. But then she had twins, and they were so tiny that they put ladies' handkerchiefs on them for diapers. One weighed a pound, one weighed a pound and a half. And they lived well, and they weren't identical at all. They were,
Mm-hmm.
but they, I think they were in their 70s when they passed away, but I'm not sure.
I think Annie Isla was in her 70s, but Memo was in her 50s.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
But anyway, they lived quite a long life, but they were weak. Their lungs was weak and everything. So, and one of them had 3 kids, and one of them had 2 kids, and now they're all
Yeah.
having kids,
Yeah.
and grown up and everything.
Now, is it true that when they were infants that they slept in
A cigar box,
yeah,
yes,
they slept in a cigar box because they were so tiny?
they were. They were so tiny. I didn't even think they were human. I'd never seen anything like that.
Yeah.
I didn't even think they were.
Do you have any other memories of your brothers and sisters, or any games that you played, or any experiences that you had?
Well, mostly, it was just things we made up ourselves.
Yeah.
Like I said, my brother and I. Of course, the other kids was real small, and they didn't get out and do things like that. But like I said, we fought every day who was going to be the cowboys and who was going
Yeah.
to get to be the Indians. So, but we had fun and we did things together. One of the bad parts that I remember real well was having to go to school, and in the wintertime, whenever the snow would be up as high as the barbed wire fence,
Mm.
and in the blizzards. So, but we had our horses, and Dad always said, "Your horses will bring you home,
Yeah.
and they'll know the way home, no matter what it is." But I remember we'd hold our heads down on our chests like this, so you couldn't see,
Wow.
and they'd take us home.
Wow.
So
So when you rode your horse to school, did they have a stable at the school
they
for
had
the
a
horse?
barn. Now they had a barn for the horses,
Mm.
and we had 2 outside toilets, and we had a pump. We had to pump our water,
Yeah.
and that was all that we had. Well, there was a basement where the furnace was,
Wow.
and they had coal down there. But we never had nothing like they have
No,
now.
it's so different. So
Yeah.
what about were you closer with your father, or were you close with both of your parents?
No, not really. I mean, it seems like, you know, when you come home and you say, get your clothes changed right now and get out in the barn and get to work. You just didn't
Yeah.
have time to really, you know, I don't. It was different. It was different than it is now.
Yeah.
You didn't say, "Well, did you have a good day?" or "How was your day?" or anything like that. It was just you change your clothes and get out to the barn and get to work, or
Mhm.
get in the garden and go to work. It was just work all the time, and the kids worked just like the men did.
Yeah.
And
Well, do you have any favorite memories of your mother or father that you'd like to share?
well, I have some. I don't know about my mother, but my dad, I can remember some funny things about him. We had snow really, really deep, and my brother and I, we went out. Of course, we made tunnels. That was our thing to do in the wintertime, go out and dig tunnels and run through them.
Hmm.
And the snow was so thick you could walk on top of it. And my dad was coming back with a pail of milk, and he was walking on top of the snow and fell through our tunnel. We were both scared to death, and we was going to get a big whipping, but he just walked to the house and give us a dirty look.
That's funny. What about the story about the black man who knocked on the door hungry?
Oh yeah, my dad was the most unprejudiced person in the whole world. We never had anything, but we managed to eat beans, cornbread, biscuits and gravy, or anything that was make a big pot full. And some black man knocked on the door and asked my dad if he had any work he could do for something to eat. He said he hadn't eaten for 2 days, And he was going on the third. He was getting awful hungry. He couldn't hardly go on. And my dad said, well, we don't have a lot, but he says, we got a big kettle of beans. And so he brought him out beans and cornbread. And that man eat like he never eaten before, Daddy said. And then he thanked Daddy for it. And Daddy got him another bowl. And he just couldn't believe it, he said. But he sat and talked to my dad, and my dad treated him like he was a good friend. And when he left, Daddy gave him a great big old hunk of cornbread with some butter on it and some molasses too. But that was like giving him candy.
Yeah, that's wonderful. So what about, can you tell us about when you met Poppy and when you were working on the ranch?
Okay, yeah. Well, the servicemen had there was, what do I want to call it? It was a place where the servicemen was all at. There was a big airport
Mm-hmm.
in Walla Walla,
Mm.
Washington. And right down, the man that my dad worked for, he had this area that was a park and had a creek running through it. And the military asked him if they could have their picnics and parties down there. Well, me and my brother was fishing, and we met these two servicemen. They come down with a fishing pole and was fishing too, and then we got to talking. And then it just led to being a friend, and then just carrying on everything. And then pretty soon, after about 3 or 4 months, well, we was going to a movie,
Uh-huh.
and then it just got a little more serious, and then finally we got married.
Yeah.
So,
And so after you got married is when you ended up working on the ranch together.
oh yeah, we went to Florida,
Uh-huh.
and he was in the military, and went to Florida, and then come back, and we moved into Walla Walla, and then we somebody told us about this ranch job over in Enterprise, Oregon, and so we went and looked at it, and it was 10,000 acres, and they ran cattle and horses, and they had mules, and it was $200 a month.
Mm.
And we built fence. Boy, did we build fence, and we put up telephone poles,
Wow.
and we, we just did everything. Milk cows, and they had a bunch of pigs, and we take care of them. And then the horses, we took care of them, and then all of the outside ranchers that had big cattle drives, they would come to our place
Mm.
and go on to wherever they've taken their cattle for the summer feed or the winter sale or whatever. And then you didn't lock your house. If you locked your house, you was outcast
Wow.
because those cowboys come through. Your house was to be open.
Wow.
They used to have a coffee pot, and they were free to go in and sit down and make their coffee. They always cleaned up everything, turned their coffee cups upside down. The coffee pot was washed, and they turned it upside down. So if there was two, there was two cups. If there were five, there was five cups, and you knew how many was there. And that they'd come in and they made their coffee, washed their hands and stuff, and that was it.
Wow.
And if they had something in there to eat, but they always wanted the coffee. The coffee was always supposed to be. And if you had something you had to lock up, you put a lock on your bedroom.
Yeah.
That's the way it was. And it was uh, a free, happy. Everybody was honest. There wasn't no thieving or anything.
Yeah.
Not that I ever heard of in there.
Uh-huh.
And as old as I am, I never heard of anybody taking anything out of any of the homes. They were all unlocked. We were about 10 miles from Walter Brennan's ranch.
Mm.
So that was quite a thing for me to know.
Yeah.
And
And so how long did you work on the ranch?
we was there 3 years.
3 years,
Uh-huh.
yeah. And was that right after you were married?
No, we had Jimmy Allen.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, he was 3.
Wow.
Yeah, 3. Yeah.
Wow. And what year did you marry did you and Poppy marry?
In 1943.
1943.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Wow. And so, in 1943, was that the end of the Depression, or was the Depression still happening?
Well, I think the Depression was just about gone, but people
We're still
couldn't,
recovering from
yeah,
it.
yeah,
Yeah.
and they just couldn't believe it, you know. They were all afraid it was going to linger on, make it go more, you know.
Yeah.
But people were beginning to eat and then have jobs and, you know, a few jobs. They weren't a lot of people that was smart enough to take the jobs like they are now, you know, with computers and stuff like that.
Right.
But they could do by their muscle and their brain. That was the
Yeah.
way they were. That was the good old days. I think back now, you know, and look what I've got. I've got electricity. I've got a washing machine. I've got television. I've got just about anything you'd want, except that my eyes are bad and I can't drive. But I've had cars, nice cars, you know,
Mm-hmm.
and I love my life now. You know, I mean, I can't do a lot, but if I could see, I would be the happiest person in the world because I could make a bigger garden than what I got,
Yeah.
and I could do a lot more and do for if well, I wouldn't be able to eat it, but I could make it for other people, you know.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And I when I buy groceries nowadays, I buy either 5 or 8 container cans of food that I don't want, that I'm not buying for me, like pork and beans or beans of any kind, they're protein. And I buy canned meat, spam, and those little canned hams and tuna and stuff. And then when I get a bunch of it, I have asked my friends, will they take it to the food bank?
Oh, that's nice.
Because that's the only thing I can do, you know.
Yeah.
And the church has, I think it's coming up here in a month or so, where they have a kind of a, it makes people want to do more, you know, where they have a thing where which church can give the most to the food bank.
Okay.
So all of the people in the church, you know, the parishioners, they bring things. Last year, I sent 3 boxes, and Vern said that the biggest one that I sent weighed 72 pounds.
Wow.
It was
Wow.
canned foods. But see, I don't get to go to town not very often, but when I do, I always try to buy something for the food bank.
That's
Yeah,
wonderful.
it
So,
is.
and do you think that is because you remember the Depression and you remember what it was
Oh,
like?
yeah, I remember what it was like, and I remember even after I was married how hard it was sometimes, you know.
Can you talk a little bit about the state of the country or the community that you lived in, what you remember seeing with the people, the neighbors, or with yourself, and just
At what time? I mean, what time during the?
during the Depression?
Oh, well, yeah, everybody lived in the country. We lived out in the country, you know,
Yeah.
and I think about 2 miles down the road, there was a family, and we went to school with their kids, and sometimes they'd get to come up to our house and play, you
Mm-hmm.
know, but that was the only thing we had outside of school kids
Yeah.
was just those three, maybe yeah, there was three. There was two that was my age, and then one that was younger, and sometimes we all get together and play
Mm-hmm.
something. But no, we never had anything. We never had any toys or
Mm-hmm.
anything like that. You know, whatever we had, we made it ourselves and called it a toy. You
Yeah.
know.
And that was the same with the food, right? You
Uh-huh.
basically
Oh
grew
yeah.
your own food
Oh
and
yeah.
canned for the winter
Yeah.
and butchered your own food and
Uh-huh.
didn't go to the grocery store for those kinds of things.
Oh no.
Yeah.
No. You know, when you live that far out of town and you have a horse and wagon or a horse and buggy, you know,
Yeah.
and when you went to town, when Daddy would go to town, it was just like all the others. They stopped by every house on the way down to the town, asked if they needed anything, and
Wow.
give me a list, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the way that people should be today.
Yeah.
But if you do that, you know, what do you? They're wanting something from me. Well, I don't know what it is, but they're
Right.
being nice. They want something. You know, they give you that impression. So
Yeah.
I don't know.
Now there was a story you told me the last time I was in town, and this story I think took place later on while you were married, about a neighbor woman who came to you and asked you to do her a favor. She wanted you to hide a jar of money. Do you remember?
Yes, oh yes.
Can you tell us that story?
Yes, yes. That was Maudie Pierce. She was full-blooded Indian,
Uh-huh.
and she had the money, and I don't know where she lived, right next door to me, and she was just as sweet as she could be, and she had told me several things, you know. She told me, she said, if you want pretty hair, she said, have your husband to kill a deer, and then take the ribs and boil them,
Mm.
and then scratch your head with that. She said that makes your hair strong and it grows.
Huh.
She says that's the way we get our hair so nice and long and heavy. And then she told me, she says, and Twyla used to cry all night long with an earache, and I'd sit and hold her, you know. She said, oh, well, what's wrong with that baby? What are you doing to that baby? I said, nothing, you know. And she said, well, is there something wrong with her? I said, well, she's had ear problems, ear trouble. I said, I'd take her to the doctor. She said, phooey on the doctors. She said, you do what I tell you to do. And she told me, she said, you get you an onion, a big old onion like that, and you put it in the oven and you cook it till it's just mush.
Mm.
And she said, then you poke holes in that till you can split it open a little bit, cool it, and you put it on that baby's face and push it down. And she says, and you leave it on there till it cools completely. And she never had another earache.
Wow. That's amazing.
Yeah, I don't know. You know, I was very skeptic. I didn't believe it either, but by golly, it was the truth.
Uh-huh.
And, you know, they had their own ways. They didn't have doctors and stuff,
Right.
medicine stores they could go to.
Mm-hmm.
But that was Maudie Bills. She was a very, very dear friend. And her, her husband, he was so funny. He was really good to us, but he was a thief.
Ah.
And everything we had in our little shed out back, he stole.
Wow.
And JB said to him one day, he said, I wonder where my pitchfork went. He says, just a minute, I think I saw it somewhere. And he went up to his sons and he brought back.
Oh no.
And then JB got, you know, in on it. He figured out what was going on.
Uh-huh.
But, you know, he just couldn't control it. He'd steal it, and then whenever you wanted it, he just brought it all
Give
back.
it back. Wow.
Yeah.
Well, what was the story with Maudie though, with the jar of money, and she wanted you to hide it for some reason?
Oh, well, she was, let's see, what was it? She had something wrong with her. It's been so long ago. My God. I know. She brought it over to me, and she says, I want you to take care of this. And I says, okay. And she says, I'll be back. Oh, she was going to go she's a Walla Walla Indian, and a Nez Perce, and she was going to go to one of the other tribes or something. And she says, I don't want to take this. She didn't tell me what it was or anything. And she said, but I want to be safe, and I want you to keep it, and you're the only one that I trust. Okay, I didn't know what it was, and I didn't care, you know. I mean, I just wanted to keep it safe. And so she left, and she was gone for nearly a year. When she come back, she come and wanted the envelope, and I gave it to her. She opened it up, and she says, it's all here.
Wow.
But whatever it was, I never paid any attention. I knew it was a thick envelope, you know, but I didn't look at it or anything. I trusted her too much, you know.
But you found out later that it was a large sum of money,
oh,
right?
yeah, uh-huh, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But, you know, that's the way the Indians used to be. When my dad, we was in Nebraska, he'd always hire the Indians. They'd always want to come and work in the fall, you know, because we shared the grain with them.
Mm-hmm.
Never had nothing, no money or anything. But whatever was in the garden, we shared with them, and whatever was in the field, we shared with them. And they'd set up their teepees, and I'd go up there and play with their kids, you know, and the teepees was warmer than our house was.
Wow.
Nice, and they had their bedrolls all rolled up and along the wall. And every time that everything was over with and all, then when they get ready to leave, they always take one of Daddy's cows or one of his horses to something. Daddy let him get 2 or 3 miles down the road, then he'd hop on his saddle horse, go after him. and they just laugh, you know. They never refused to give it back to him, but
Wow.
they'd steal something from him every time they left. And I never really in my life ever knew if it was intentionally or if it was just a joke,
Right. Yeah.
because I really think if Daddy wouldn't have went after him and they got to the reservation, it was theirs.
Yeah.
It would have been theirs forever.
Uh-huh. Interesting. And were
Yeah.
they? It's funny you talk about the teepees. Did they
Uh,
were they in their traditional dress with the feathers and?
no,
Oh
well,
no.
they had the baggy clothes, you know what I mean,
Uh
and
huh.
a lot of
Leather clothes.
yeah,
Yeah.
pants and stuff like that. But there was something else that I thought was really fun. Oh, we canned our food and we salted it down and we put it up the best way we knew how. But they'd take a pumpkin or a big old Hubbard squash, and those Indian women, they didn't have the best of tools or anything, but boy, they were perfect for what they used them for. They cut the top of that squash or that pumpkin off, dig down in there and get all of the seeds out. They saved those. And they take all of the strings that's in a squash or something, this pulp that you don't eat, and then they got that all cleaned out. They take this knife and go around it, and they go round and around and around and around that sharp, sharp. And then whenever they got through, they'd have a rope that reached from that tree clear out to the road. And
Wow.
they put it on the clothesline and dry it.
Wow.
And that's the way they kept their food for the winter, their
Wow.
vegetables.
Yeah.
And they did green beans. They'd put it was a rawhide, or a string, whatever they had, through those, and they'd hang them up and dry them that way, hang them right up and dry them.
Wow.
So that I remember all real good.
Yeah. Yeah.
And they were just so many things. But you never think about putting it down. I remembered because I was old enough and had to help with it whenever my folks did it. Whenever they learned to do it, I
Yeah.
had to help with that. Like I say, I knew how to put down the salt pork. I knew how to do the bacon and the ham. I knew how to do the chickens and pickles and sauerkraut and all of that. And I used to help Daddy all the time do the corned beef. But for the life of me, I cannot remember what was in it.
Just in the corned beef.
Yeah, like
Mm.
corned beef and cabbage for
Uh-huh.
Irish Day, and it has sugar and brown sugar and salt and everything in it. And I have a recipe that a lady copied for me off of this kind of a machine, and she is so tiny I can't read it.
Mm.
I can't even read it with my magnifying glass.
Oh
So
no.
tiny, so I can't do that.
Wow. Well, I think that's might be the end of our conversation, unless you have anything else that you'd
Well,
like to share.
I, well, one thing I was going to tell you when I was telling about my mother and daddy selling cream and butter and eggs,
Oh yeah.
they'd take 12 dozen of eggs to town and get 15 cents a dozen for
Wow.
them. That wasn't much money, but it was money that they could buy something that they couldn't make.
Yeah. Oh, and then wait, will you tell us about your clothes the clothes that you had when you were a little
Oh
girl?
yeah, well everything we had was made out of flour sacks.
Mm-hmm.
And then once in a while, Mama would send him, I think it was Montgomery Ward's or Sears and Roebuck catalog.
Mm-hmm.
And they used to be able to buy buggies in there and
Wow.
harnesses and all that stuff. Harnesses and bridles and saddles and everything in the Sears and Roebuck catalog.
Wow.
And they had material in there. It would be 10, 15 cents a yard. Sometimes she'd get some money, had a little left over from eggs or cream or something, and she'd send for 2 or 3, 4 yards of material and make us dresses. But other than that, we wore flour sacks.
Yeah.
And we had 2 dresses, and 3 aprons.
Wow.
And we had to wear an apron every day for 2 days, and then we got to change the apron, but we wore the dress all week. Well, we had to
Mm.
change the dress as soon as we come home, you
Uh-huh.
know.
And you did all your laundry by hand?
Oh yeah, on a scrub board and did all of it on that.
What about, did you have any indoor plumbing at all?
Oh no. Well, one place when we moved in a place where my grandpa had, uh, it was just a flow down from the windmill, and they did have a faucet in the house,
Okay.
but they got cracks in the holding tank for the water. It was a big concrete thing with a roof over the top of it, you know, and it got cracks in it, and there was some frogs and some snakes in there.
Wow.
So we had to quit that, and then we'd go up there to have to go clear up on that hill to get a bucket of water to drink or to cook with or anything.
Wow.
And I've always been scared to death of lightning and bad wind.
Yeah.
And every time it started to lightning or the wind started to blow, and I was sent up there to get the water.
Oh no.
I was scared to death. I'd run as fast as I could, but then I couldn't run back. You know, I had that bucket of water, and I knew I had to bring it home. So.
So what about when you needed to bathe? When people needed to bathe?
Well, we had the old galvanized wash tub, you know, big one like that. And they put it in the middle of the floor in the kitchen.
Uh-huh.
They bathed all the kids first.
Wow.
And then the parents went in it.
So by the time the parents got around, was it the same water?
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
Uh-huh.
So that the parents got the dirty water.
Yeah, but they said they were clean.
Yeah. And then you had to go outside to use the restroom in
Oh,
the
yeah.
outhouse.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
Did that get scary, like if you had to go at night and
Well,
you were a little
Bonnie was the only one. She was scared to death to go out, and Isla.
Uh-huh.
Bonnie and Isla, they were scared to death of the dark.
Mm.
But I never was, and I'm still not scared of the dark or anything, you know. But
Yeah.
anybody could scare me to death, you know. But then I'm not afraid to be alone. I'm not afraid to go outside after dark or anything. But if I wake up and see some man looking in my window or anything, you know, that'd scare me.
Yeah.
But
not then. And so did you have a like just a wood stove that you cooked on inside the house?
Big old wood cook stove, and then we had a wood heating stove too.
Mm-hmm.
And we'd get up some morning and everything was froze, ice.
Wow. Like the floor and the walls would be frozen?
Yeah, well, you know,
It was too cold.
condensation coming in, you know.
Yeah. Did you live in like cabins?
Well, no, they were homes, but everybody had big families and little homes. Because this home we had was 1, 2, 3, 4 rooms with 10 people.
Wow.
So
a lot of the children shared
yeah.
beds.
Uh-huh.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Excuse me. Something else I was going to ask and I forgot now. Oh, I know what I was going to ask. So you talked about having the horse and buggies.
Mm-hmm.
So do you remember the first car that you saw, like when you saw a car for the first time and what that was like?
Yeah, well, somebody drove in our yard, was a family, you know, and they were taking their dad to the hospital. He had Quincy. Now, I think that was something wrong with your breathing. I don't know, but it was called Quincy. I remember that. And boy, my dad went out there, and he was just so happy to see that it was a new car. We'd never ever seen one like it before, you know. And he went up, and they wanted to know if he, you know, got some water or something, so Uncle Homer could have some water because he was just choking to death. And so Daddy ran in the house and got something for water, I think a jar or something. And then they went on to Hay Springs, took him to the doctor. But Daddy got a Model T.
Wow.
Old Model T later on in life, you know, before we had to leave on account of the droughts and the Dust Bowl and all. And it was just one-seated, and it had a trunk on the back. Mom and Daddy sat up in that seat and put us 8 kids in that little old trunk. And I bet you it wasn't any bigger than this table.
Wow.
But we all fit in there, you know, because you had to.
Yeah.
You had to.
Wow. And then did you have a radio when you were growing up? Were you able to listen to the radio shows?
We had a radio, but now I'm not sure what it was, because I can remember that Dad would sit real close to that, and we all had to sit there, and we didn't dare breathe hard. but it had a big battery too, and he always listened to Western shows, you know.
Mm-hmm.
He always listened to those, and but that was the only time it was on. That's whenever those come on. That was at evenings, you know, after supper and the chores was all done and everything.
Yeah, so that was a nice way to have some relaxing and some
Yeah,
entertainment.
uh-huh.
Yeah,
Family time, but it was very quiet. You know, it had to be quiet.
right.
So,
Wow.
but you know, it was hard. It was very hard. But I think I'm a better person for that. I
Yeah.
really do.
Mm-hmm.
Because like the neighbor up here, I said we could never go back. She said, I wish we could go back to the good old days. I said, you know, you're just wishing false,
Mm-hmm.
because there's no way you could go out here and build an outhouse and get away with it. The law would have you and
Right.
fine you and take it, tear it down or whatever, you know, in
Because
a heartbeat.
everything's different.
Yeah,
Now the mentality is different, and so
uh,
much is different.
yeah.
I was going to ask you about that. If you, what, in your lifetime and for your generation, you've probably seen the most change
Oh yes.
in the world than any of us. I mean, I've seen change in. I mean, for my life, there we went from not having any computers and cell phones to that, but that's not a big difference. But you went from having horse and buggies to growing your own food and not having any produce in the grocery stores
Yeah,
to a electronic world, basically.
it is. And you know, I don't think progress is going to be the one that we survive for. I mean,
Yeah,
I think it's going to be the death of all of us.
I agree.
Because you know what, Ronnie, now there all of these guys that's invented all this stuff, the Apple, and I had known nothing about it. I just know the name. There is a computer,
Hmm.
and these iPods and that stuff. I've just heard those names. But you know, they're getting so greedy now. And one is cheating and getting something from the other one, and the other one is so smart he's inventing stuff. But you know, the Bible says, when there's no more wars and no rumors of wars and nothing left to invent, lo, the second coming of Christ.
Yeah,
And it's getting there. It's
yeah,
getting there. And I'm not a one to preach to anybody, but I mean,
right.
I'm just saying what I read in the Bible.
Yeah,
And it's scary. It's very scary, and not so much for me, because I don't think I've got too much time, but for you and Amy and Sherry and their little kids, you know.
yeah. I
That,
think about the children in my life and what the world will be like when they grow up, and
yeah.
what will they have to deal with. Because we already see so much destruction of the earth, and people in society seem to, like you were saying, people were much more friendly, and your father would stop at the houses and ask, "Can I get something for you?" And now it would be like a stranger knocking on the door, like. So
Well,
there's not much unity anymore.
oh no, And you know, back then when it was harvest time, everybody in 10 miles, Ronnie, was at your place. And then when it was their harvest time, you went then. The women and the kids went. The women went with pots of food, pies, cakes, cookies, breads, everything.
Yeah.
Because they were all of the men and their boys was out there in that field working.
Wow.
And it just went on that way for 10 miles down the road or
Right.
further, however many there was.
Mhm.
And then when it was all over, they in the fall, somebody would butcher.
Mhm.
And then they would all be there for the butchering, and everybody get their share of the meat, and they'd have a big meal, and they laughed, but there wasn't anything else going on. And if they went out, which you'd say, like you go out now, it was at the schoolhouse, you
Mm.
know, and they did have dances, and they had, my dad used to play the violin and mouth harp,
Wow.
and you know, and he played banjo too. But there was a whole bunch of them played violin and all of it. You know,
Yeah.
there'd be 3 or 4 that played each instrument. When they'd get up and dance, so somebody else would play for them,
Mhm.
and it was fun. All the little kids was out there dancing and
And that's
everything, you
great.
know, and it was fun.
So there was more of a spirit of community
Yeah, and
when
more family, more
family
family
and
thing.
community.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's what we need now. We
Yeah.
really need it now.
I agree.
And you know, my my happiness now is to cook and have somebody to come. The
Yeah.
more the merrier.
Yeah.
People can't understand that.
Mhm.
Boy, don't like it. And Guy, your Uncle Guy always said, well, you go to Mabel's house, you go away hungry, it's your own darn fault.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because, I've always cooked all my life, and none of the rest of them really cared about cooking.
Right.
None of them knew how to can.
Mhm.
I don't know if your mom does now or not. I don't
Yeah.
think.
I don't know.
And I know Bonnie, the oldest one, she never knew anything about canning or making jam or jelly till I told her,
Wow.
showed her, and we both had kids by then.
Yeah. Well,
And
for you is cooking is it's an art really or a gift and like a talent,
hmm
but I think it's also a way that you share love and that you express your love for
yeah,
people.
I realize that too because I know just having you here to eat with me,
Yeah.
well, it's just like me going out on a real exclusive day,
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. She
yeah.
made me a really great lunch we had and some homemade chocolate cake from scratch and it was delicious. So, it's true everything tastes better at Nini's house.
Well, I'm glad you said that because that makes me feel good.
Yeah.
But I like to cook. I had a big um, clam chowder feed, and I had, see, there was 2, 4, 6, and 8, 9 people for a clam chowder.
Wow.
And we stretched this table out and brought one, not the brown one, but the white one in. And everybody eat till they couldn't eat anymore. And they said, "Oh, this is the best I've ever had in my life." But when you go into a restaurant or something and order clam chowder, it's so thick and you get nothing but potatoes. You
Yeah.
don't get the
Right.
taste of clams and the bacon and the onion and the stuff, the garlic that's supposed to be in it.
Uh-huh.
Oh gosh, I like it, and I tell everybody if there's any left, come back for the next meal, and they always do.
Oh, good.
Yeah, they always do.
Well, I also wanted to ask you, Nini, you mentioned the Bible a few
Mm-hmm.
minutes ago, and I wanted to know when you were growing up with your parents and your siblings, you talked about having the 2 dresses and the aprons. Did you have a church dress, and did you go to church on Sundays?
No, the church was too far away.
Mm,
You know,
mm-hmm.
we just couldn't do it because everybody got up and they had all of their animals to take care of,
Right.
and so we didn't go to church. But
What about on like Easter or Christmas?
no, we had very little.
Yeah.
We maybe we had a lot of eggs, but we never had no money to buy anything to color 'em with except Mama would we'd have our cellar bins, big bins, where we'd have a bin full of carrots and potatoes and beets and cabbage and stuff, and we'd get the beets and bring them up and cook them, and then you slip the skins on them, and that is, oh my goodness, your hands would blood red then,
Wow.
and it's edible,
Uh-huh.
very good, and we'd boil our eggs and put them in that juice,
Oh, okay.
and we'd have colored eggs.
Wow. Did you ever make ice cream from the snow?
Not from the snow. I didn't, but my mom and dad said they had. But when in Nebraska, when it had a storm, when it hailed like this,
Wow.
huge, And Mama would send us out with a gunny sack. We'd pick up all the hail and bring it back in, and then she'd make homemade ice cream.
Wow.
Because we had no ice, nothing like that.
Yeah. Do you remember the taste of it?
Oh yeah. I couldn't hardly take the rotten ice cream when I first had it. The first time I had it,
Oh,
the
yeah.
only thing I was thrilled to death because it was in a cone.
Oh, yeah.
I'd never had a cone before.
Uh-huh. That's
Yeah,
funny.
yeah. So
Well, then going forward into your adult life, um, I wanted to know if you had any memories about my grandmother, Iva, who I call Mamo. If you have any funny stories or good memories that you'd like to share about her.
oh, she was. I don't know. Iva and I was very very close, and like I said, she is the one that could work in my kitchen with me and never get in my way,
Mm-hmm.
And she never had anything. irritates me to death, you know. But let's see, she was, I forget how old she was when she was crippled. She was just young. She stepped on a nail, got blood poison. They were going to amputate her foot.
Wow.
And, but they, something happened, they didn't, but they took a rod and went from one hole to the other where they had lanced it, you know.
Wow.
She laid there screaming, and us kids was all bawling and howling. You know, we scared to death. The doctor was out there. He was the one that was doing it. But I guess if he hadn't have done it, she would have lost her foot or her life, one of the two.
Yeah. Wow.
And, you know, she didn't have an easy life, and Isla was a cool little girl. Mama would bring home, in later life, you know, when Mama had a little money, she worked in the cannery in Walla Walla, and she'd bring home 2 pair of anklets, both exactly the same size, both the same color, both exactly alike. And as she went up to Iva and says, "Here's a pair of anklets for you, and here's for you, Isla." Isla bawled and screamed and had a fit because Mama didn't say Isla first.
Oh no.
She was terrible.
Wow.
She was that way with everything. And if Mama, everybody didn't let her take her first pick, no matter, like I say, could be just identical. She threw a fit.
Wow.
And I never could understand that in my life. But she was babied a lot then and got her way. So.
There was a story that you shared with me a while ago about Mamo when you were adults and you had gone grocery shopping and she had gone in to get a loaf of bread. Do you remember that story? I think that you said that you had waited in the car or in the truck and she ran in to get a loaf of bread. And when she came out, she went to a different car. And it was quite funny the way that you told the story.
Oh, that one, yes. Okay. Yes. Down here at Erickson's. Well, I had taken a leave of absence and come over, worked in the potato field with her. You know, I had my job, but I just took a leave and I wanted to come over here. And we come home. She said, "Well, I want to stop and get a loaf of bread tonight because I don't know how much we got." I had a white pickup, you know, my pickup, and she come back and she got in the wrong pickup. And Ronnie, she looked at him, "Well, you son of a bitch." I died laughing. She said, "He had no business parking there." And he parked there before I did.
That's funny.
I tell you, I died laughing. I couldn't help it. And that poor guy, he just looked at me, thought I'd gone crazy.
That's hysterical.
She said he had no business parking there. I laughed so hard. Yes, I remember that real well.
That's a great story. Do you have any other fun memories?
I'm just trying to think. It's hard to think whenever, you know, it's so long ago.
Yeah, well, you shared quite a bit with us.
Yeah.
So maybe that's good for now. We've been talking for almost an hour. So.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So.
Well, it's been fun.
It has been fun. Yeah. Thank you so much for sharing this. With us.
I hope it's what you want. And there's probably 10 times that much if I could just get my brain wrapped around it, you know. But it's been a long time, and I don't remember too awfully well anymore either.
Yeah, well, I think you've done a really good job, so I hope that... I mean, I'm just glad to have this preserved for myself to be able to listen to it whenever I want, but also for anybody who's watching this, I hope that you also enjoy hearing a little bit about my Nini's history. And if I didn't say it before, Nini is my great aunt. Maybe you caught that. So she's the eldest sister to my grandmother Iva, who passed away when I was in the 3rd grade. So it's always very special for me. I haven't seen her in 5 years, so I'm happy to be here and have some time with her.
And I love you too.
And I love you very much. And we're going to say goodbye for now. So thank you for watching.
Bye. Oh, yeah.